Same dude, different day. Chapter 2. Why did he pick me? What was it about me that kept attracting the same type of men over and over again? How was it that two different men with two different backgrounds both treated me as unworthy? And why did I allow it? My self-esteem was significantly low and seemed to be setting the standard for the raggedy relationships I was entering. My final semester of graduate school was right around the corner, so it was important for me to get myself together and get focused. Several miscellaneous dudes entered my life during that time, but I couldn't focus on any of them because I had stuff to do. Plus, my most recent relationship had caused me to put a slight wall up. Who had time to be chasing dogs only to later find out that he had fleas? Certainly not me. The real world was just a few steps ahead of me, and I had no time to waste. My hard work paid off because I had successfully completed my last semester and landed a job at the university I had just graduated from. As soon as my 90-day probationary period in my new position had passed, it was time to celebrate. The Caravana Festival in Toronto, Canada was rapidly approaching, and that would be my graduation present to myself. The weekend was filled with parades, festivals, and several other events that highlighted the Caribbean culture. The party boats were being heavily advertised, so my girls and I got dressed and headed straight to the docks. The music was great and the vibe was amazing, all up until the boat actually started moving. The waves had me feeling a little nauseous, so while my friends were on the dance floor twerking to the soca music, I was off in the corner with my head bowed between my legs. Suddenly, I felt a strong, steady hand rubbing my back. "Are you okay?" Xavier whispered. "Do I look like I'm okay?" I said with an attitude while trying not to throw up. He pulled me up to give me some motion sickness medicine and a bottle of water. When I saw how fine this man was, I wish I would have been a little bit nicer to him. He stayed and took care of me for the rest of the ride, and y'all know how I feel about protectors, so I immediately adjusted my tone. By the time we finally docked, I felt like we had known each other forever. We had so much in common, but unfortunately, this included our heights. Typically, I only date guys that were taller than me when I'm wearing heels, yet there was something about his ginger-colored hair and matching freckles that intrigued me. His presence was comforting. I can tell he had a big heart and something inside of me wanted a piece of it. So much so that I was willing to look past his 5'7" frame to get to it. Once we got back to the States, we realized that we lived less than 45 minutes away from each other. The short travel distance allowed us to spend a significant amount of time together. And since quality time was something that I lacked in my previous relationship, I fell for him very quickly and hard. So hard that I stayed with him even when everything in my body told me to run. You see, there was always something a little different about Xavier, but my infatuation with him made me ignore all the red flags. Similar to my last boyfriend, he never tried to move too fast with me, even though, I was down for whatever. Worried that he too would try to stick me in the friend zone, I began to pull away, but he never let me go. He told me that he respected me and wanted to focus more on mental intimacy. So convinced and honored that he had put me on such a high pedestal, I proceeded with the relationship, oblivious to all the heartache that would follow. Xavier and I had officially announced our relationship on social media after several weeks of dating. Both of our pages were full of likes and congratulations as most of our followers had witnessed him courting me. This was so exciting for me, especially since my last dude didn't even claim me in public, let alone on the internet. But my high was soon deflated when one of our followers decided to chime in on our love story. She sent me a DM and asked if we could meet somewhere to talk. She and I were from different circles, and our crews never really cared for each other much. I didn't trust her, and I didn't want to meet her alone, so I just gave her my number and told her to call me. When she called, I can feel her uneasiness through the phone. She sounded as if she were grieving. Something in me wanted to console her and let her know that everything was going to be okay, but little did I know I was the one that was going to need consoling. With a heavy heart, she told me that she needed to tell me something important. After a deep breath, she managed to mumble, "I'm sorry, but your man is on the down low." Those words successfully cut off my air supply. All the blood in my head rushed down to my feet. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was cry and listen. She informed me that Xavier and one of her gay male friends were intimate back in the day. "Xavier who?" I asked. "There's a lot of Xaviers in the world. Who you talking about?" Apparently, her male friend had came across me and Xavier's relationship announcement and was smooth upset at my man's attempt to hide his true self. He vented to her, telling her all the details of their dirty adventures, and she, in return, told me, "When I tell you I could have gone my whole life without hearing any of that," I blacked out. I don't even remember ending the phone conversation. I definitely don't remember getting in my car. But when I came to, I was outside of Xavier's dental practice, waiting for him to come out. He didn't come out fast enough, so I busted in. During all of our mental intimacy talks, it would have been common courtesy for you to tell me that you like guys, I screamed. He was so nervous. Wait, wait, babe, what you talking about? My response was an eye roll so severe that I'm sure he thought my head was going to start spinning next. With eyes full of tears, I started hyperventilating. Xavier tried to comfort me during my full-blown panic attack, but I had a feeling it wasn't for my benefit. He was doing everything in his power to try to keep me quiet so that his coworkers and his patients wouldn't hear our conversation. Refusing to censor myself, I continued to inform him of all the secrets that had just been revealed. He was shaking and sweating and whatnot, but he managed to embrace me while assuring me that none of what I had been told was true. Xavier was a smooth talker, and it didn't help that he knew that I was gullible. That was probably one of the reasons why he picked me to begin with. He knew that at some point he would be able to manipulate me. I wanted to believe him, but more than that, I wanted to believe that I was worthy of love. No one else had ever made me feel the way that he did. I had become accustomed to the idea of us being together forever, so I made myself believe him. I swept all of my feelings of that horrible conversation under the rug and walked around the figurative lump in my carpet for several days. Note to self, stop lying to yourself. Everything seemed to be back to normal until two of my good friends called me late one evening. At first, I wasn't alarmed by their late night phone call. They'd often called to give me the scoop on the latest drama. I've never been much of a phone person, but gossip was always much more enjoyable when the stories came in high-pitched enthusiasm. This time was different, though. All the excitement disappeared from their voices. Something told me that instead of being told about other people's business, this time I had to endure a three-way intervention about my own life. They explained to me that one of them had received a call from a concerned party. Somebody nosy. But whoever it was, they indeed gave them the same information that the other girl had gave me a couple of weeks ago. So me and Chick, even though we didn't really like each other, after she told me all this information about my man, we kind of became frenemies. I'm like, okay, you was looking out, sis. I appreciate you. I didn't want to hear it, but I feel like you got my back, so it is what it is. But I had made her promise that she wouldn't share the details with anyone else. So just to be sure, I had asked them a couple of questions to verify that the information hadn't come to her. She wasn't the culprit. And since another source had come forth with the exact same information, it was no coincidence. The truth was being shoved down my throat, but I still denied all accusations. To protect Xavier, I became very angry with my friends, disrespectful even. Full of emotion, I unfairly spewed all the pimped up aggression that I should have released on Xavier onto them. Protecting him was negatively impacting my character. My friends didn't appreciate my attitude, so they ended the call and later ended our friendship as well. The secret had now cost me my friends, my self-respect, and I was at risk of losing the love of my life. Multiple sources knew the truth, and deep down in my heart, I think I did too, but I wanted to give our love a chance. He knew the best and the worst parts of me, but he accepted me anyway. The least I could do was believe him, so I tried my best to do so. Note to self, don't love him more than you love yourself. The next chapter of our relationship was a blur. Although it was very selfish, I finally understood why my ex would tell me that he didn't want me to be with anyone else. Now more than ever, I obsessed about Xavier spending every idle second of every day with me because I wanted to make sure he wasn't spending with other people, specifically men. I found it very interesting that he was an orthodontist, but for some reason he couldn't fix his mouth to tell me the truth. My hunger for honesty began to annoy him, and I was annoyed by his anger. How you gonna be mad at me for something you did? There I was trying to love him through my pain and accept the past that he was unwilling to share with me, and he had the nerve to be annoyed with me? Our relationship faded quickly, but my love for him remained. Till this day, I still care about his well-being. I almost refrained from sharing this part of my story in fear that my truth would negatively impact his way of life. And I want to protect him at all costs, but who's going to protect me? If I were ever to obtain substantial healing, the real root of my issues needed to be exposed. We eventually went our separate ways, but just like in the past, I never really received closure. Was he really on the down low, or had several people from several different walks of life created an elaborate plan to play a cruel joke on me? Perception is reality, but my reality was that I loved him no matter what, and I didn't really want to believe what I believed. After we broke up, I took a hiatus from relationships. I was done. I was like, this is too much for me. The serial monogamous in me felt the need to latch on to every guy within a 5-foot radius, but after the situation with Xavier, singleness was deemed unavoidable. Getting dumped by my secret ex-boyfriend was one thing. Being pushed to the side by my side dude was another. But this whole Xavier thing was a new level of discomfort for me. My emotions were hard to articulate, so I sought a professional to help me navigate my feelings. If I kept holding everything in, I would eventually deteriorate. Xavier was usually there to listen and help me brainstorm whenever my life had gotten off track. Now that he was gone, there was no one there to show me what to do. Plus, I was too embarrassed to talk to any of my friends about the situations. Most of my friends knew him, and to keep him safe, I kept my mouth shut. Thankfully, my job's employee assistance program offered 3 free counseling sessions. My counselor didn't really understand me the way I needed her to, though, so I never went through with all of my sessions. Therapy is now more widely accepted in the African American community, but there was a time when it was frowned upon, especially by the elders. You don't need therapy, you have God was one of the many myths that I had to struggle through to even sign up for help. So when I finally did, I needed someone who could keep it real with me, someone who had a similar background that I could relate to. My counselor was nice and everything, but you can tell that she grew up on the right side of privilege and would be unable to empathize with my upbringing. That's why I was always so frustrated when she wanted to talk about my childhood. Granted, most cognitive behaviors stem from something a person has gone through as a child, but we only had 3 sessions. Spending all the allotted hours digging at the root of the issue would have been beneficial, but my most recent tragedy had broken every logical bone in my body. Instead of doing the work to get healed, I ran away from the solution like I had always done. My pain was pushed way back into my subconscious with hopes that no one would ever find it, especially not me. In time, I became numb and pretended that that part of my life didn't happen. Typically, when a woman experiences heartache, she does something drastic like cuts her hair or self-medicates with drugs or alcohol while destroying the man's personal belongings. Well, it was going to take more than a new hairful and a bonfire full of his clothes for me to tackle the obstacles that were in front of me. Finding out that the so-called other woman that is wreaking havoc over your relationship was actually a man, now that causes a different type of shame to attack you. Feeling like an outcast, I packed up all of my stuff to leave the only place I've ever known to travel to unfamiliar territory. Operation Get the Hell Out of Dodge was in full effect. Every waking hour of every day I spent trying to come up with an evacuation plan. Humiliation and disappointment oozed from the holes that had been poked in my confidence. Yet, I slapped on a fake smile and muddled my way through life. I often used Photoshop to erase my blemishes in my photos, but no filter could cover up my emotional scars. Pretending like nothing was wrong was eating me alive. My lack of interest in myself, social activities, and life in general was beginning to raise concerns. Everywhere I turned, people were asking me different questions. What's wrong with you, girl? Why you acting like that? You've been down lately. And I just continued to give them vague answers. It's funny how my ex's failure to come out of the closet forced me to push my truth into the proverbial closet as well. I couldn't tell people that the man that I planned to spend the rest of my life with was bisexual. If he didn't even want me to know his true self, I'm pretty sure he didn't want my nosy friends and family to know either. So instead of telling them the whole truth, I told them that I felt like life had become mundane and that I needed to change. My dark and dull routine had become scary to watch. I had to do something and I had to do it fast. The only reason why I didn't move immediately after my relationship ended was that I wasn't sure where to go. My issues with loneliness prevented me from moving to a place where I didn't know anyone. Suddenly, I remembered that my friend Jada, who lived in Atlanta, was looking for a roommate. My new hiding spot was now secured. The next day, I gave a resignation notice to my employer and started making plans to uproot my life and plant it in a new city. Everything happened so fast, and I hardly weighed the pros and cons of my decision. Was I scared? Absolutely. But if I would have waited to get all of my ducks in a row, I might not have ever left. Michelle Obama said you can't make decisions based on fear and the possibility of what might happen. So I just put on my big girl panties and started making moves. Now that I had a relocation destination, it was time for a mental overhaul. Since I never completed my EAP healing sessions, my issues still remained unresolved. Honestly, I just wanted a time machine so that I can forget everything that had happened and just start all over. I wanted to disappear in thin air, but my longing to feel sexy was more potent than my desire for amnesia and invisibility. My self-esteem was at an all-time low. My recent role as Xavier's cover girl didn't exactly have me feeling easy breezy nor beautiful. I dove headfirst into a promiscuous lifestyle, hoping that my erotic activities would lend themselves to fulfillment in other areas. Note to self, sex only temporarily numbs the pain. Since I lived in a college town, the prospects were either inexperienced or illegal. Venturing out to neighboring cities in pursuit of pleasure became my nightly occupation. One night, my girls and I went to an upscale lounge where I saw a familiar face, Tobias. The last time I saw him was during junior year of college. In all those years, he hadn't changed a bit. He was handsome and well dressed, and his goatee that perfectly framed those big, juicy lips was just as appealing as it had always been. While in college, we both had reputation. Mine was for being a good girl, as many of my relationships were low key. His, however, was for being a whore because all of his sexual encounters were basically advertised as front page news. We often addressed him as Campus Loop, which was a nickname derived from the college shuttle bus that stopped at every single dorm in the university. I wasn't as experienced as he was, but I was eager to learn and I wanted him to be my teacher. Tobias smiled at me and I melted right there in the middle of the dance floor. He grabbed my waist and pulled me close to him, and we proceeded to slow grind to every single song. There were no words, just movements. My hips were holding a full conversation with him and he was fluent in my body language. Our lips touched and our tongues followed. We parted ways that night, but surely that wouldn't be the last time I felt his body close to mine. Tobias was the type of guy that made me want to take off my panties and hand them to him with no questions asked. He was incredibly sexy, and I hoped that my underwear would be unnecessary during our next encounter. Fantasizing about all the ways that I would explore his body became the best part of my day. Imagining his big, rough hands grabbing me and pulling me closer to him continuously put a smile on my face. We didn't exchange numbers that night, but I passed my digits to him through a mutual friend. There I go chasing a man again. Well, I wanted to feel better, and he was the right man for the job. We skipped the small talk, and he sent me his address. Full of thirst, I pulled up to his place within a matter of minutes. Playing hard to get wasn't even an option. As soon as he opened the door, we rushed each other as if we hadn't seen each other in years. Our clothes fell off immediately. His chest, arms, and abs were reminiscent of a my-size action figure. This man proceeded to fold me up like origami pieces that night. It was exactly what I needed. The ability to have sex without emotions or expectation was a liberating experience for me. I didn't have to worry about what he thought about me, what other people thought about me, or even how I felt about myself. It was kind of freeing. Our sexual encounters continued for several months. He was my Prozac, numbing me from all the pain of my past. A significant amount of time had passed since the whole mayhem with Xavier, but my wounds still hemorrhaged. Why did God make me go through that? And why did I have to go through it alone? He could have at least given me a heads up. But since he didn't, having sex with Tobias was now my way of rebelling against him. I knew I wasn't fulfilling the purpose that he had for my life, and I figured that there was no point in trying. He wasn't doing what I wanted him to do, so I decided to be petty and do the same thing. I had run away from God and would soon be running away from my hometown in hopes of leaving all of my issues behind. Note to self. Know when to leave. Several people showed up for my going away party to wish me farewell. It was touching to know that so many people cared about me. I contemplated staying in hopes that my support system would help me work through my internal battles. The problem was I wasn't ready to share the truth with any of them. My friends would be unable to provide guidance if I were unable to introduce them to the real problem. Should I stay or should I go? I played all the possible scenarios out in my mind until anxiety became unbearable. Well, that was nothing a few shots of liquor couldn't handle, and luckily my friends were buying several rounds of temporary pain relief, so I was able to get through the night without a care in the world. From what I can remember, my going away party was epic, but so was the headache that appeared the very next day. I woke up super drunk and felt like I had been run over by the U-Haul that was parked in front of my apartment. Also, I couldn't understand why my legs were so sore. Was it because I had did so much twerking the night before, or was it because Tobias had took me in one of those bathroom stalls to give me a personalized farewell session? Either way, I needed to get my life together. As I struggled to stop the swirl in my head, I realized I only had about 15 minutes before the charity truck would arrive. After the truck carried away all my belongings, I sat in my one-bedroom apartment alone. As I began to scroll through my phone to review the videos and photos from my party, I began to cry. Tears continued to flow as I realized I wouldn't see some of my friends again for a very long time. The sound of my sobbing echoed throughout my empty apartment. Finally gathered up enough strength to make it to the restroom to wash away the raccoon eyes caused by my previous night's mascara. As soon as I entered the bathroom, I began to cry even more. I tried to convince myself that I was about to embark on an exciting journey and that I should be on top of the world. Instead, I felt like the world was sitting on top of my shoulders, and my lack of stability, as well as upper body strength, would again prove me to be a failure. As the remnants of my past insecurities began to resurface, I realized that those free counseling sessions were worth exactly what I paid for them. Nothing. There I was, aimlessly wandering around in the wilderness I had created in my mind, trying to glue the broken pieces of my life back together. I felt like the children of Israel. At first, I couldn't understand how an 11-day journey turned into 40 years of bondage. Then I realized it was probably the same way those few months with Xavier turned into several years of settling in cycles. Because they complained, the process of leaving their current situation and excelling to the promised land was prolonged. My goal was not to get caught up like them, but neither God nor anyone else should have expected me to serve my time without exhibiting a little bit of an attitude. If you found out that your knight in shining armor preferred a cape made of glitter, you'd be a little upset too. I knew complaining wouldn't make anything better, so I continued to bottle up my feelings. Besides, I felt like nobody would have cared to listen to me anyway. In silence, I placed my luggage and my emotional baggage into the U-Haul and prepared to transition to the next phase of my life.